Hey guys, welcome back to the Scrap Life adult side of the channel here. One thing that people inquire a lot about on the main channel when we do salvage auction walkthroughs are the vehicles, what they ultimately sell for, because when we show them at auction, sometimes they don't have a run date. Some of these cars take months, if not even years sometimes, to run down the line. One that we did recently at our local Washington, D.C. lot was this burned Nissan GTR. It just ran at auction this week, and it sold for a pretty penny for the condition that it's in. So we're going to run through the auction here. I'm going to show you what it sold for, and then I'm going to play the clip from the video that we have on the main channel. You can let me know down in the comments what you think about the selling price, especially, you know, in comparison to something like the Demon here that was a, I guess, similar burn, a little bit worse. You guys probably know what we paid for that. We have about 20 grand all in on that car for the purchase price from the auction. So let's take a look at this GTR. We'll see what it sells for. You can let me know what you think. Both Carrington and I were pretty optimistic on this car that we could get it. Both of us wanted to see more on the underside of it, but we only put 18.5 on the car. We were outbid, pre-bid, started rolling at 19.4 when the auction actually started, and there were a couple people in on this. It looks like South Carolina, Oregon. I saw Kentucky pop up at one point here, South Carolina again. And no, nothing's really popping into my head as far as who this might be. I know B is for Build is out in Oregon. He did that, the R69. I don't know if maybe he has a reason to want another driveline. But it's also possible that these people are bidding through brokers. That happens sometimes also. So, but this is it, kind of winding down. You can see Kentucky and Oregon were the last ones going at it. I always got to give you the bonus time. That's when you get those jerks that just hit you with the one bid just to spite you. And there you have it, sold for $20,800, which I think in the grand scheme of things isn't too bad. Again, we were in at 18.5, which would have been about 20 grand all in. With that price, especially with shipping out to Oregon, you're probably looking at more like 23 in that range, maybe even a little bit more than that, maybe more like 24, but it could also be an end user. You guys know that we are a parts warehouse, so we are interested in making a little bit of money on the back end. But if you're somebody that is looking for that driveline to use in another project, for example, maybe even another GTR, then you can spend that money and it makes sense, because the only other option is to buy it from somebody like us that would have it in stock, which you're going to pay retail on. So if that is going to the end user, I think that price makes a whole lot of sense. I think there's good value there. It's only a little bit above what we were willing to pay on it. But what do you think? I'm going to run the clip from the video. You can see all the parts that came on it. There were a lot of aftermarket stuff, titanium, a big fuel system, the front suspension, the front brakes, they all looked fine. Basically, the entire front end of the car was good, except for the hood, which had some really, really weird damage. So let me know down in the comment section what you think. And then also if you kind of would like to see maybe more of these reviews on the side channel for these cars that you've seen on the main channel, and we just can't, you know, make sense of doing a feature on the main channel for something small like this. So let me know what you think. Stay tuned for more stuff, and see you in the next video.
Now, one car we don't have to worry about people underestimating the damage on, this GTR, which truthfully is the reason we came here today. We kind of been wanting to buy one of these to do a salvage story on, to part out, but with the craziness that is the Copart Rebuild Challenge, I have been looking for something that's just a little wild to rebuild. And I do suppose a highly modified and highly burned R35 GTR would fit the bill. I actually have owned one of these cars before. It was way back in the day. Mine was a 2009, the original one. I believe this is a 2017 and up, judging on the bumper, though I'm not gonna bet my house on that.
I believe that the headlights are kind of a telltale indication, and it does also have what's left of the steering wheel, which kind of indicates that as well.
For obvious reasons, I haven't really looked inside this car, but that definitely is the newer steering wheel. He's right. I think the dashboards are a little bit different on these newer ones as well. This, like that 240Z over there, absolute shame. They're actually burned in a very similar way. This one also apparently has some carbon fiber in the trunk. I suppose we'll dig into that a little bit later. And not only does it have carbon fiber in the trunk, there is a exhausted is 100% titanium based on weight. I'll let you be the judge as well. That thing is way lighter than I expected it to be. That's titanium, it's gotta be. If that was stainless, you wouldn't have got 3 of those in.
As I'm getting my swole on here, I can also see that this is a Boost Logic exhaust, and I'm not nearly as strong as I used to be, so yes, this is definitely titanium.
Yeah, I gotta admit, that kind of sucks. Boost Logic, top notch. They make awesome parts for these cars and quite a few other cars. That really hurts to see a titanium exhaust, though. I do suppose it doesn't look physically damaged, does it?
No, I was just thinking the same thing, that it's ugly because of everything that burned down on top of it.
Patina.
Patina, okay. That makes sense, but I don't know if people like patina on GTRs. I mean, it's not a 270Z.
While we can consider that patina, and you could probably put that back on a car, I don't know what you're doing with this, what used to be a carbon fiber spoiler, though that is kind of impressive. The entire trunk is full of that. I don't suppose that all that's a spoiler. Maybe there's a rear diffuser on this too.
You can see some formed molded carbon fiber, so this is either maybe part of a trunk or this had a full carbon fiber spoiler on it.
As much fun as I'm having digging through the graveyard that is this trunk now, I think the front's gonna provide us with a little more value. One thing of note though, these are some small wheels on here, 18 inches I believe. This car had to have been making some power. For you to have drag radials on the front end of one of these cars, you're definitely making some power. And I suppose that's all backed up by the fact that I see these massive fuel lines here. Oh, what's that? 4 Innovations fuel pressure regulator, Visconti tuning fuel rails. So the more we look at this, the deeper it gets. Titanium intake pipes. The one kind of weird thing about this, usually when you're running a fuel system like that, when you're running tires like that, you'd have some big turbos on here. The fact that we have stock intercooler pipes, you have stock turbo manifolds down there, which, don't get me wrong, you can put bigger turbos in the stock housings. It's what I did on my car, and it made about 1,000 horsepower. I would have expected some big aftermarket turbo manifolds and maybe a more flashy turbo setup.
From what I can tell in the grill, it looks like factory intercoolers up front, which again is not what you have on big power cars.
That's weird. He's definitely right about that. Factory intercoolers. And this doesn't look like a car that somebody took back to stock after it burned down. They would have definitely taken these titanium pipes. They would have ripped the fuel system out of it. Maybe what's going on here is that they were prepping for a build and it just never came to.
I feel like a lot of the GTR guys do build these cars in stages. So I think that theory does hold up, that this thing was progressing along and was eventually hoping to make 4-digit horsepower.
I'm not sure that we can call that a letdown, though I was hoping for a little bit more under the hood considering what's going on outside of it. But if we were to buy this thing, even if we were to part it out and not fix it, I have all the reason in the world to believe this engine's good. So there's nothing up here that's touched whatsoever. The engine's completely intact. I suppose Tetsushi Matsumoto's creation lives on. But on the parts front, this entire front bumper, they're big money. The old GTR stuff's worth a ton of money, so I can only assume that this is worth more. We have a bunch of good under the hood, and then of course we have Ray's engineering wheels. They're not cheap by any means. You have these big 6-piston Brembo brakes. There is a lot of money in this car, but that's not why I like it. Frankly, this car just reminds me of a less bad version of my Demon. The interior, though it is burned, is somewhat intact, way more intact than mine was. Also, unlike my car, this one comes with a key. Though I do suppose that's a very minor detail. Now, when you get to the rear here, it does look like there was some type of an impact, which I have to presume caused this fire. I don't think that rear trunk pin, there's no way that buckled from just heat. This thing got smacked into right there. Maybe the exhaust got pushed into a fuel line, the fuel tank. I don't exactly recall where they are in this car. Or maybe it just got pushed into a broken diffuser and lit up. It is a shame, but structurally, this thing looks much more intact than my Demon. The roof isn't coming off. It's fairly flat. I wouldn't say it's the most structurally sound thing in the world, but at least it's attached.
The only real mystery on this car that I'm having trouble figuring out is where this damage came from. All the stuff at the back, the fire, it's all pretty easily explainable, but giant gashes and dents in the hood, that's a little bit curious.
We know on the Demon, the fire department got into it and screwed up the door. I would suppose, though, that if they did that here, there would be much more damage to this light aluminum fender. That is really weird, because from this way, they're just straight holes. And I know often when we buy cars like this, you guys down in the comments tell us what happened based on your experience, maybe with the fire department or a wrecker service. And I'm gonna stop right there, because what do we have here? An 85 sensor. That's an odd place for it. Usually I see these inside of the car. I suppose that's some of the wiring maybe for the fuel system. What is that? I want to say that's one of those fancy fuel filters.
While Carrington's checking out the mods, I'm just seeing that the battery cables aren't cut, which is the reason that I got in here, which makes me really, really curious about that damage and honestly what caused it.
Coming back to the rear, because I just can't get away from looking at terrible damage. I think this suspension here got whacked pretty good too. I can't tell for sure. I suppose some of it could have melted in the fire. That wheel is obviously like 15 degrees negative camber. The one on this side, same deal. So maybe it did melt. If they're both equal, I don't suppose they would have both got whacked in different directions. Actually, now the more that I look at it, the inside of that wheel is completely melted. It's gone. It's burnt in half. That does not look like wreck damage to me. This thing is wild. It is by no means an easy fix. Personally, I already have one of these projects, so I wouldn't pick this one up. If we buy it, it's for parts. But I do think that I'm gonna make this my pick for the Copart Rebuild Challenge car that one of you guys should definitely buy. I think you just have to pick something terrible like this, show what you can do, or at least attempt like I'm trying to do with the Demon, even if it makes no financial sense and you're roasted endlessly online.